Thanks a lot for inviting the United Nations to this very important symposium. And also by chance, I'm a fellow of the World Academy of Science and Arts. And this is a very interesting example of a cross-academy work. And you set the example because I think we need these kind of exercises to move forward. So basically what we are talking today, it's about the climate crisis and how this climate crisis needs resilience across the planet and across societies. And I think it was very interesting how Professor Posch commented on the Anthropocene. We are in a new era. We are in the era of the Anthropocene. It's a new era that requires us to assume what it implies. We are beyond the nature versus society divide. We are embedded in nature. Nature embeds us. So we are in a new period in which we have influenced nature, but at the same time, we have the challenge to create nature. And this is what the Anthropocene means. We influence nature, but this influence can be also created. But to do that, we need three things, which is at the core of the discussions today. We need a new epistemology, a new way of understanding. We need a new social organization, a new way of acting, and we need a new way of educating, which is about transmitting the knowledge and transmitting the social organization to the new generations for them to continue innovate. And that's what it has to stay here. And I think it's very interesting that the two Pontifical Academies wanted to deal with that. So I'm going to go rapidly to this point. New epistemology. Because we are in Anthropocene, we need new knowledge systems. If we go to the Paris Agreement, which is the critical international juridical instrument to deal with climate, and actually is, in my conception, the fundamental treaty, the fundamental international treaty of this century, when you look at Article 7, which is article on adaptation and resilience, talks about an equated scientific knowledge, traditional knowledge, knowledge of indigenous peoples, and local knowledge. Different knowledge forms are mentioned in the Paris Agreement, and I recall at that time with Timaren, with Ambassador Indu, when we were preparing and influencing the Paris Agreement, even if it was a very imperfect outcome, it has been the last multilateral agreement. And unfortunately, the way the world it is today, we are not going to have many multilateral agreements of that scale in the coming years. Hopefully soon we'll take the baton. But it's very important to know that the Paris Agreement recognized the need of multiple knowledge forms that indeed they need to integrate and to break. And that's the big epistemological question. All knowledge systems, in a way, they try to understand and relate to nature. So when we look at scientific knowledge is about understanding nature. I saw here in one of the inscriptions here in the Great Hall about Galileo, the great scientist who precisely set the basis of the scientific method to understand nature. The point of scientific knowledge is that it has provided a very strong and robust understanding of nature, but at the same time, it has underpinned a tremendous technological and industrial revolution that has undermined our planet. So it's a knowledge that has transformed and changed our planet. Indigenous knowledge also understands nature, but has a more curating approach. Because the value systems around indigenous knowledge is very different from the value systems around the scientific knowledge. It's not a question of judging one or the other, but it's now at the Anthropocene time, we need to connect these two knowledge systems indispensably. Why? Because we need to continue understanding nature, and this nature is evolving very rapidly because of us, but we have a lot of uncertainty. We need to create it, and we need to manage it in a sustainable and equitable way. And here I want to mention something important about indigenous knowledge. Very often we tend to think that indigenous knowledge is local knowledge. It's knowledge only related to a specific location. In the current era of Anthropocene, indigenous knowledge is universal knowledge. It's the knowledge that will allow us to do the social transformations needed. And here I move from the new epistemology that we need, that I define, to the new social organization. So how to break knowledge? And one important thing is to understand that knowledge, to some extent, is in our brains and it's in our bodies. But knowledge flourishes and evolves because of institutions. Scientific institutions are the ones that hold scientific knowledge. Academies, libraries, laboratories, books. These are cultural instruments, institutional instruments that hold scientific knowledge. Indigenous knowledge has also its institutions. Sometimes, for instance, we talk about women's rights, women associations, because there is knowledge that is distinct across gender. The knowledge, indigenous knowledge, is related to the land, is related to the ecosystem. And here goes the big challenge that it's actually about participatory governance, about rights and human rights at the grassroots that is indispensable. And this is the question that my colleagues, Agnes or Ambassador Indu, were mentioning about appropriation of knowledge, about misunderstanding of knowledge, miscontextualizing. The knowledge is embedded in the landscape management. The knowledge evolves. Indigenous knowledge is not frozen knowledge. It's knowledge that is continually evolving. And if we are able to build institutions that will accelerate this braiding that we are discussing today, both Western knowledge and indigenous knowledge will keep evolving into a form that will be maybe the Anthropocene knowledge that we need in the new decade. So this new social organization is about new governance structures. It's about institutional creation that will allow braiding knowledge. We need new ways of doing things. We need more participatory planning at the grassroots, there where the indigenous knowledge is. We need to bring governance down where there are territories, because in the end, the challenge of the planet are twofold. It's about how we manage the landscapes and ecosystems, and how we manage technology, cities, and industrial systems. These are the two big challenges for sustainability. Another thing that is needed in this social transformation is to connect to the digital revolution. Digital tools offer us a unique opportunity to break knowledge, but it has to be done, as it was mentioned before, through open approaches and through equitable and transparent approach. But digital knowledge, and we are already practicing in a number of countries, it was mentioned now Costa Rica, in Ecuador, in Colombia, we are connecting satellite data from national governments with digital applications by farmers, by indigenous peoples who are doing cartography of their territory, and this is much. But this is very important, empowering the grassroots in digital tools, because that was the question that was mentioned here. Who controls the information? Who controls the data? Who provides? Are those companies outside that want to appropriate, or is the knowledge that comes bottom up? So there is a critical question here in terms of the digital revolution of empowering people. And actually, digital capacities and digital tools in the community is what will allow precisely to capture, protect, nourish indigenous knowledge. So it's very important to build these capacities. And nowadays, with cell phones, with digital systems, that can be done. The big risk is to have international companies that want to access the knowledge. Actually, and this was, I think, a challenge that was discussed before lunch, is that our companies wanted to access the knowledge from locally. Well, I would put the question, we need to pervert the dynamic. Do indigenous peoples and local communities have access to the finance that they need? The matching has been to be even. So it's very important to take the opportunity of digital tools to do cartography, to have information, but to do in a way that is open source, that is transparent, and protects the rights of indigenous peoples over their knowledge, and that facilitates this braiding. So digital revolution can facilitate the braiding, but requires good governance. The third methodology is about investing in the knowledge holders. And as I mentioned, indigenous knowledge is in the community. Indigenous knowledge is in the local governance structure. It's in the life plans that indigenous peoples prepare. It's in the indigenous bioeconomic solutions that are designed locally. It's very important to bring institutions of participatory governance at the grassroots, because this is the way to bring up knowledge, but to bring up knowledge and break knowledge, empowering those who are the knowledge holders, and those actually who are the ones that are going to be the guardians of the planet, because they are the primary stakeholders in nurturing the planet. Final point, we need a new education. We need a new approach to education, which basically ensures that this braiding of knowledge systems is powered through the new generations and creates new knowledge forms. In the 20th century, there was a big educational revolution across the world. There was primary education across the world that has been a major progress along the 20th century. And the two big objectives of the education in the 20th century was to create the new citizens and to prepare the workforce, the labor force, for the technological and industrial evolution, with all the good and bad things that has. I mean, the industrial revolution has given a lot of well-being to humanity at last, but at the same time has created a lot of problems to the planet, as many of human innovation. The education we need in this century is an education that, of course, continues to nurture citizens, but is a difference from the 20th century where we needed a labor force that was qualified. And with that, I will finish. In the 20th century, we need the curators of the planet. So we need to change the way we do pedagogy. We need to continue building citizens, but those citizens need to be those who take care of the planet. And this is a change on value. And here we need from innovative pedagogies to more changes like the one that the Academies here in the Vatican has proposed, but also to bring the academic institutions to the grassroots. I think this is important. And to ensure that the academia that indigenous peoples and local communities organize is recognized. As Agnes was saying before, no rank. Braiding is about equality. But if we go together through these challenges that the Anthropocene offers us, which is a new epistemology, a new social organization, and a new pedagogy, we can nurture a new planet across this century. Thank you very much.